So in today's episode of Refashioned, we're talking about the death of Vogue, courtesy of Lyas, Bezos, and Anna Wintour herself. And if you've missed out on what's happening, then trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this, because I am not exaggerating when I say that there has been drama with the publication. We're also going to be discussing all of the weird and niche and interesting things that I took away from Fashion Month, plus the things that you guys have sent me, the interesting TikToks I've come across, and the thing the internet is obsessing over right now, Caroline Bassett Kennedy and Love Story. We literally have so much to talk about, so we're going to need to get into it. If you're not familiar with the Refashion podcast, then I'll say hi, welcome. I'm going to present to you the weird and wonderful and interesting things that have been happening on the internet lately, happening in the fashion industry, and we're going to sit down and analyze them and discuss them in the comments. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel or following along wherever you're listening or watching this on, and let's get into it. Okay, starting with the Vogue is dying statement, and specifically Lyas's nail in the coffin. I'm going to explain what's happened first, because I don't know if anyone has been able to keep up to date with exactly how many twists and turns have gone on with this drama. I've literally been screenshotting everything like it's a concert, because the amount of Instagram stories and posts and just shade being thrown is a little bit unprecedented. We talk about Lyas a lot on the podcast, but if you're not familiar, if you're new here, if you've forgotten who he is, then he is the influencer who has recently gained popularity for making the fashion watch party a thing. And this is actually what the entire drama has revolved around. Basically, Vogue announced they will be doing an invite-only event live streaming the Balmain show during this fashion month. And Lyas took this as Vogue stealing his La Watch Party fashion format. He called out the publication on his Instagram stories, not even throwing shade, but directly atting them. Atting Balmain as well, with the caption, "No shame." He then did a follow-up Instagram story that said, "The people that be smiling to your face are so quick to rip you off. Condé Nast, that's not how you're going to stay out of debt. You want to be cool, and you're once again proving you're the lamest publication." Now, my first reaction to this was not shock, because I don't know if you guys remember, but on a couple of other podcasts, I've been talking about the popularity of the live streaming model and saying it was only a matter of time until the fashion industry got in on this in some way, whether it was brand collabs with Lyas or whether people took the live streaming format. So yeah, I was not shocked when I saw the Vogue news. I was shocked at how hard Lyas went against Vogue for this. Almost immediately, he did an updated version of his schedule for the watch party in Paris, and the only difference to it was that Balmain had been crossed off the list. Not removed, but crossed off, so people could clearly see that something had happened there. The way I immediately sent this to my Instagram group chat channel was a little bit unhinged, because I knew something else was going to come. And then it did. Lyas put out a reel referencing this entire situation, captioned Vogue, "I'm disappointed." And I kind of want to put in a little bit of what he said here.
Since last year, I dedicated my life to this project. I have invested all my money, all my time, and all the energy of my team working on this day and night, trying to make La Watch Party happen in order to make fashion more accessible, to break the elitism that's rotting our industry, and Vogue is doing the opposite. I spoke to Anna Wintour in September, and I told her, please come to La Watch Party. It would mean the world to like all these people, like thousands of kids coming every day to watch fashion shows. Imagine if you came to give them a word of hope. It would be amazing. And she was like, I'll try to come, but the concept is genius. She used those words. And I was like, okay, fab. So she's gonna come at some point. And she just stole the fucking concept. They are backed by Amazon, the biggest company in the world. I am on my own trying to get the money, the sponsors, to keep it free and open for everyone. And they just steal. They don't care.
To me, the comments were actually the most interesting part of this, because you have people like Imran Ahmed, the founder of BOF, saying stuff like, in my experience, this is what Condé Nast does. Like the shade being thrown by the entire fashion industry towards Vogue, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it. I mean, Lyas calling out Anna Wintour directly in this reel, saying that he met her, saying that she said she was a fan of his watch parties and would try to come along, is just like the gloves are off here. I mean, immediately after all of that, the watch parties kicked off. Lyas did another reel showing how he'd filled an entire theatre full of people for his watch parties and captioned it, can Vogue do this? And this has kind of overshadowed all of Paris Fashion Week. Lyas has been posting more and more outrageous content, kind of proving that his La Watch party is becoming cemented in the fashion industry. And meanwhile, I haven't seen Vogue react to this really at all. And I didn't really see any content from their invite-only event. Although I do think a lot of the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, there has been some hate towards what Lyas has said, especially the part about how he has invented the live streaming concept and potentially has some ownership over these kind of events in fashion. But the way he reacted to that, I think, is too iconic to put down. He made an email address for people to send him his complaints, I think haters@lyas.com, and then he made that into merch that he sold on Vinted. Like, I don't know, just the difference between how he reacts to criticism versus Vogue is just so Gen Z. So, thoughts? I mean, I've seen a couple of different arguments, mostly people agreeing that Vogue has stolen his concept here. A couple of people disagreeing, saying that he can't own the concept of live streaming, and also that Vogue's event was different enough for it to not be stepping on his toes. I mean, it was invite only versus free access like the watch party, and it was targeted at influencers and celebrities rather than the public. But I think the fact that Lyas is saying that Anna was going to come to one of these La Watch parties, that she loved the concept, and then they came out with this later on, kind of does speak for itself. Also, I haven't really referenced this yet, but Lyas is also claiming that they stole an app idea from him beforehand. So there's almost like a history of this happening. I did already cover my thoughts on this in a reel, more of a reaction really to the news than an actual in-depth analysis. But I think it's the fact for me that Vogue chose to do this rather than collaborate with La Watch Party. And that was a decision they made as a publication. They chose to do something invite only, closed off, targeting influencers and celebrities, rather than joining in something that at its heart is supposed to make fashion more inclusive. I think speaks a lot to what the publication is aiming for and what it's always stood for. However, I did have someone on YouTube leave a comment on the reel that I posted about this that I think was really interesting, kind of a counterpoint. They said, Lyas is completely right about Vogue stealing his idea without even respecting the concept of accessibility, but he recently complained about Bottega streaming their show on billboards in front of the venue for free. And I don't get that. How can you complain about a brand showing their runway for free, no invite needed, as a treat to the audience who made the effort to come and greet the stars at the door? Isn't that what he wanted in the first place? Especially when he didn't even have his own watch party plan for that, and he himself was lucky to be seated inside. I think he's crossing the gatekeeping line with this one. He didn't invent the concept of the fashion watch party, and though he was right with Vogue and people should give him credit and respect his concept, Lyas should be happy that his idea probably inspired more brands to be open. I mean, once again, I think it comes back to the fact that it would have been nicer for Bottega Veneta to approach Lyas and collaborate with him and therefore kind of validate the work he's been doing to make fashion more inclusive. I think the Bottega Veneta one is a little bit trickier, but in terms of the Vogue situation, they come off looking very, very bad. And that's just the cherry on top of what has been happening for them this month. We'll come back to the Vogue drama in a second because there is so much more I want to talk about. But first, I think we need to talk about this hot take I saw on TikTok because it's so relevant to the Lyas situ, and while we're on it, we need to discuss.
Fashion hot take. I don't think you should be allowed to attend a fashion show for like a heritage or just a fashion brand with a lot of history if you can't pass a quiz upon entry at the front door. You need to know a little bit about the brand. I will never forget when I was sitting at the Anne Meester show and Anne herself was sitting across from me and I tap on the shoulder of the guy sitting in the front row in front of me. Oh my god, I think that's Anne. She's like, what? She's here? She's not the designer? What do you mean? What do you mean? Or when I asked someone, just like outside the Margiela show, which I did not go to, but he was like, I asked him as a joke, haha, what's Margiela's first name? And he said Mason. He was half front row at the show. Anyways, that is my hot take.
This is the definition of a hot take, because at one point, influencers being invited to Fashion Month was symbolism of inclusivity coming back into fashion, of fashion embracing the masses. And it was celebrated for that. And now you have people in the comments agreeing that influencers and celebrities should not be invited to fashion shows. We should close the gates again. We should make it about insiders and journalists and stylists and the people who directly impact the industry. I definitely want to know your thoughts on this in the comments, but I think in my mind there's two sides of this. My first reaction was elitism is already so bad in fashion and now you want to make people have to do a quiz before they come in the show. I mean, probably not actually, but you want to make people have to prove that they should be there at a show before they can sit down. Is it not giving Men Ask Women to name 2 songs by the band that they're wearing a t-shirt for energy? But at the same time, is it not prompting people to take fashion more seriously? To let people in who actually care about seeing the clothes rather than just being seen to see the clothes? And I think it goes back to this kind of tension that's happening in the fashion industry right now. I mean, if you look at this from a brand's perspective only, this is not an option. Celebrity and influencer appearances are perhaps the only things getting media spotlight right now. And fashion can barely keep the lights on anyway. Influencers and celebrities bring awareness, they bring visibility, even if they turn Fashion Month into a circus. I mean, Janae from Fashion Things has the best take on this, as always. Her article mentioning this TikTok is literally called The Runway is a Content Farm. And her take is, when Fashion Week stops being about the clothes and starts being about the fanfare, what are we left with? Perhaps a clearer view of what fashion has always been about: power, performance, and participation. The difference now is that the machinery is visible and we can see the optimization happening in real time. Anyway, I thought that was a very interesting interlude and definitely has links to the concept of La Watch Party. This idea that people who truly care about fashion should be invited back into fashion is seen throughout Lyas's events, with the designers who are partnering with him and bringing the runway shows to his door. And I think with the amount of people loving this concept, with the amount of people agreeing with this fashion hot take TikTok, it kind of puts VoguE on the wrong side of the aisle, catering even more to the influencers and celebs that already have so much access and who maybe aren't the future of what people want fashion to be. So we're going to go back to the VoguE drama and talk about the mess up that happened with Edward Enniful and stylenotcom. Okay, so the fashion account stylenotcom did a post celebrating the British VoguE cover with Bavitha Mandana. And part of that celebration was saying that this was the first brown model to ever be on the cover of British VoguE. And Edward Enniful, who is the previous director of British VoguE, if you're not aware, commented below saying, "Fake news," and then tagged a bunch of other models who fit this description who have been on the cover of VoguE before now. He then also made a post on his own account, screenshotting stylenotcom's post with the caption, "In the haste to claim firsts, let's not forget the ones who came before and paved the way." And then the carousel shared pictures of models like Saffron Vader, Simone Ashley, and Malala, all with their own VoguE covers. This was quite a big deal. People were talking about how Edward had really called out stylenotcom, which is quite a big account in fashion now. And stylenotcom's reaction to it was to do a post saying, "Dear Edward, I think your British VoguE was one of the best in the entire history of VoguE," and then said that they'd taken the fact about Bandava directly from the British VoguE article on the cover star and included a screenshot of that in their post. Now this is important because I went back to the original article from British VoguE and I could not see that paragraph anywhere. But the screenshot lives on stylenotcom's account. And Edward replied to the post saying thank you in the comments, saying these models thank you as well. And it seems to be settled between them, but I have not seen any acknowledgement from British VoguE that they have seen this drama, just the fact that the comment has disappeared in the original article. And how bad does this make British VoguE look? The fact that they got a fact wrong about their own publication in their own article, and it's caused this entire drama. Anyway, I think that was more of a fashion insider drama. I don't know if everyone was talking about that. Everyone definitely was talking about the Anna Wintour Chloe Malle interview. I know we've all seen this interview with the previous director of VoguE and her successor sat next to each other in this weird setup, having the most awkward conversation you've ever seen. I was chatting to my friend Kate about this, and most of our sentiments were actually just focused on the body language of the two and how awkward and stilted it looked, and also how fake it looked. I'm wondering if this was just a parody of a real interview and it was meant to fuel fake drama rumors so that it would go more viral. And I mean, I think that just proves that even VoguE is not taking itself seriously. There's been a lot of hot takes about this, but I think the widespread fashion industry take is that VoguE has lost its authority in fashion industry now. It's lost its power of shaping the culture, and instead it's just reacting to it, trying to chase the reputation it once had, trying to chase public approval. And I mean, they've definitely dropped in approvals since all of the stuff with Bezos has come out. He and his wife taking over the Met Gala, being rumored to be buying Condé Nast, and of course the AI model thing comes into play here. I think it's all just shaping up into this big doom slide for them, where VoguE is finding itself almost in the pile of irrelevance now. I mean, I would feel slightly bad about saying that, but the news came literally the other day that Condé Nast has quietly sold off their LGBTQ plus publication, Them, to another publisher without wanting to attract headlines, without making a big deal about what this means for their lack of inclusion in the fashion industry now. And no one in the fashion industry seems to be talking about this. So it's very hard to feel sorry for them now. I think the court of public opinion is starting to agree. I saw one Substack writer start their article about how to learn about the fashion industry for people who aren't in the fashion industry with, "We definitely don't re-Vogue." So in my mind, the coffin is closed. Vogue is going to be shuttering soon enough, or at least just operating as a shell of what it once was. I think I said in another podcast that I thought Bezos would rip out the heart of the magazine, remove all the physical media, really focus on digital first content and AI slop and all of that stuff. And all of these individual dramas have kind of fit into the point of being sloppy, of being disrespectful, of being a shell of what it once was. I don't know. What are our thoughts? Okay, that was a lot of Vogue, probably more than I was expecting to go off on a tangent for. So we're going to do some quick fire pointers of interesting things I've seen in the last couple of months, stuff you guys have sent me. Starting with the fact that Coach brought out Key Charm books and the fact that these are a major pass to me. They're so unapologetically performative. It's insane. And I've had so many of you send me reels and content around this asking for thoughts, because I think we can all just recognize that this is just pure marketing gimmick. Peak fashion month viral emptiness. Okay, and whilst we're on the subject of worst fashion month moments, King Charles at Tulu Coca, like the king coming to a fashion show while his brother is literally getting arrested. Do we think this was a pre-planned PR scheme to make Charles into a fashion girly that just ended up having horrible timing? Or do we think they were told the news was going to break and they were like, right, what can we shove him in front of to distract the media? Let's take him to see Little Sims front row. Also, Charlie XCX's The Moment mockumentary came out this fashion month. I haven't seen it yet. I kind of want to go see it. I want to know, are we seeing it? I don't know. I did go and hunt down the London marketing promo wall, and I was not the only one there getting selfies. There was a lot of people there getting selfies, and I've seen a lot of buzz about it online. I think it kind of proves that fashion and movies link that I was talking about in my last video. And of course, Charlie has also been directly tied to the Wuthering Heights press tour and film too. So that's just kind of interesting, I think. It was announced Bernard Arnault now has his controlling stake back in LVMH. What do we think the plans are here? Where is he going to take the conglomerate? I think his investors are now demanding a succession plan, and he's been weighing up which of his children will take over. So this is gonna shape up to be some interesting drama, I think, in the next couple of years. Also, my Rama Dawaji It Girl prediction was confirmed. She made a cameo at New York Fashion Week, and I think it was super interesting that she chose to go to deATh, a small independent label, rather than a major fashion house. I was also sent a reel by one of you showing her being used as a style icon, and yeah, just further proves those predictions that arty fashion girlies are the inspo right now. Side note, does anyone know where to get a copy of The Cut in London? Because I've been searching for it because I want this cover and I just haven't been able to find one. So please, if you know, drop it in the comments. Okay, and last little quick fire. I saw someone saying that cool girls are ditching their bags. Like the it girl bag right now is to not be wearing a bag and instead be wearing a big coat with lots and lots of pockets to put your stuff in. What does that mean? What do we think this means in terms of reflecting the culture back to us? I actually can't really put my finger on it, and you guys are smarter than me, so I think we need to crowdsource the meaning here. And lastly, bit of a self promo, but I have been releasing more refashioned episodes directly to the podcast, exclusive on the podcast, that are more fun, small topics about things that I've just been thinking about that day, and you might be missing out if you're not subscribed. Like the last one was about Olympic figure skating and why fashion is hesitant to dress them, and I honestly think it was a really fun episode. So if you're not subscribed, then make sure you do. Oh, I forgot to say, last thing, Mark at Fashion Week. Thoughts. I think we need to do a video about fashion and tech like we just did for fashion and movies, because there is something going on there and we need to get to the bottom of it. Given that fashion month is over now, I think we need to talk about one of the biggest trends we saw there, and Data Make It Fashion is the one that called this out. They said romanticism is coming back in 2026. And they had so many examples of how we've been seeing this on the AW26 runways. And I have to say, I think hard agree. I think the vibe is definitely leaning towards romanticism right now. I think it's very easy to point to specific trends, to point to specific catwalks and say, hey, there's a lot of lace, there's a lot of femininity there on the runways. But I think this is also a culture shift too. I think people are falling back in love with fashion. They're finding romance and whimsy and meaning to put into clothes. And not to harp on too much about the bonus podcast episodes, but I did a recent video actually mentioning this kind of storytelling aspect going back into fashion that I think is really propping up the narrative fashion wants of what makes their clothing worth it in 2026. I explain it a little bit better on the podcast episode, but one of the examples I tied into this was the amount of family we saw at Fashion Month. Like Jonathan Anderson's parents stealing his show, Jacquemus using his grandmother as a muse, that one designer that brought their kid onto the runway. I think it shows designers want to bring back a softer side to the brand, more romanticism, less corporate grayness. I don't know, I think people are sort of done with the like clean luxury, sanitized corporate version of fashion that we've been pushing recently, and they want to lean more into the human aspects of it. And romanticism is just one way of doing that. But I don't know, what are our thoughts? Actually, good example and a segue into the next thing, which is Love Story and the obsession with Caroline Bessette Kennedy's style. I need to know if this is worth watching. My Instagram story poll seemed to eventually settle on yes it is, but it was not a landslide vote. The fact that it's been all over my TikTok feed means a lot of people have been watching it. I just think what puts me off is the fact most people are talking about the style rather than the show itself and the acting and the plot lines. Obviously I haven't watched it and I don't know much about them as a couple or her as a style icon, so I can't really give you a take on how faithful it is. But I wanted to mention it in the first place because I got a comment from a subscriber on my recent fashion and film video that I thought was super interesting. Love Story has people clamoring for the CBK look, 90s minimalism plus tortoiseshell accessories. The pharmacy where she bought her headbands has enormous lines and is overrun by the NYC fashion galleys. But it's also led people to wonder what happened to Calvin Klein, because people would love to wear the Calvin Klein stuff she wore, but that Calvin Klein doesn't exist anymore. Calvin Klein now is just sort of cheap sweatshirts and logo t-shirts. The luxury aspect is completely gone. And I'll come back to that last sentence in a second, because when I did some research on this, when I looked on TikTok for what people were saying about Calvin Klein and CBK, I did see a lot of references to archival Calvin Klein, despite the fact that the label has come back since its kind of hiatus and it's been producing looks that kind of fit in with their old aesthetic. People are still being drawn to the previous 90s, 80s looks. And I think that's interesting. Maybe it's the romanticism of the archival look, or maybe it's the fact that the brand isn't able to capture that kind of cool girl aspect that they once had because the quality of fashion has gone downhill. I'm not exactly sure what the draw is of the CBK style personally. I don't see how it distinguishes itself enough from quiet luxury to be this kind of new frenzy that everyone is really excited about. Maybe it is a little bit more casual, and I definitely think it fits into my prediction for 2026 of basic, not boring being the style. So I do kind of get it, but I'm really also not sure why everyone is so obsessed with it, to the fact that there's lines out the door for hairbands. But before I forget, I want to come back to this last sentence of the subscriber's comment. It's less about film propping up fashion as it is film drawing attention to the fact that fashion isn't what it used to be. And I did mention this briefly in my film and fashion video, but I think it's interesting that it's sparking a kind of commentary about why Calvin Klein today does not look like Calvin Klein of yesterday. And it feels like a discussion we keep having on social media, right? I mean, there was that point when the first Knives Out movie came out and Chris Evans was wearing that sweater and people were discussing the fact that it looked visually worse than sweaters that have dominated the big screen before. And that was a massive discussion the internet had about the quality of clothing that sort of seemed to peter out, but also I think has influenced subconsciously a lot of the discourse since. I mean, it's very, very true that people are questioning the amount of polyester in our society right now. I think probably most in sportswear because of the health element of it. And I have seen more content about anti-polyester, organic cotton activewear than I honestly thought possible on TikTok, given the prevalence of matching sets over there. I think the journey I just went on linking that to other trends has meant that I forgot my first point. So yeah, going back, Love Story is a watch or no. I think was my original question. Okay, lastly, I've saved this till last because the internet has been full of Wuthering Heights content. So I didn't really want to put too much emphasis on this. I think another opinion on this is not really what we need. But I did go see it. I said I go to see it after you guys bullied me to do it on my Instagram story. And honestly, I hate you all for making me, and I know that you hate me if you wanted me to see it. If I'm being honest, I wanted to leave a number of times. I wanted to stand up and leave that theatre. I sort of caught my fiance's eye and had to look away before I giggled at an important scene because the acting was just not the focus of the movie. I'm not sure if that's too mean, but the fact that I watched this and I'd watched Marty Supreme beforehand, those were the two last films I'd seen in the cinema, does not bode well for cinema in my mind. And I wasn't sure exactly what it was that gave me such a bad reaction to Wuthering Heights because I kind of knew what it was going to be going into it. I knew that the costumes were not going to be historically accurate, and that's not something that's too much of a bother for me. I mean, if we look at Sophie Coppola's Marie Antoinette, there were definitely non-historically accurate parts of that costuming, and yet my reaction to both could not have been more different. And I think both films play with fashion in a way that recaptures the mood of history, if not the accuracy, but Coppola's feels so much more successful, and I just don't quite know why. I don't know why pairing a trainer with a gown feels so much less offensive than plastic. Maybe it all came down to the rest of the films rather than just the fashion, and I just didn't like Wuthering Heights as much as I like the Marie Antoinette plot. Like, I love a historical fashion movie. I'm a big fan of Pride and Prejudice and Emma, and I will devour a historical romance series on Netflix. But Wuthering Heights has never been my favourite book, so I don't know if I would have been tempted to go see it, even if the adaptation was more faithful, more like a historical romance than a modern adaptation. And maybe that just proves the point I was making in my fashion and film video, that fashion really is propping up the film industry, and the press tour is propping up the film industry. Because honestly, I think the internet buzz was the only reason I did go see Wuthering Heights. Okay, we started ending the podcast last time with a little segment on what I'm reading, listening, and watching, because I want your guys' recommendations, so I feel like I have to give mine first. And we're going to talk about this. I've actually just finished reading Little Women, and that was really nice. I don't normally watch a film before reading a book, but the film kind of inspired me in this case. So I've just finished that, and now I need to start another book, and I'm not sure which. So I might do an Instagram poll on my stories, and you guys can pick which one. I'll give you two options. The first book is Perfection, which I think is about political activism by a couple. And the next one is Everything You Ever Wanted, which is, I think, a horror book that is very much like that Apple TV show that everyone loves, and I've forgotten the name of. The one where they have a work life and an outside life. Oh God, that's so annoying because there was a whole meme about it. I'm sorry. You guys know what I'm talking about. So those are my two options for my next books. And you guys can vote for them on my Instagram poll, which I will have up when this podcast comes out. So you'll have 24 hours to vote on that. Next is what I'm listening to. I know that everyone moved on from the Olivia Dean album, but I still keep coming back to it. I don't think there's been much that has drawn me since. I do need to listen to the Harry Styles album. I'm waiting for that. I want to immerse myself in it. So I'm waiting for a good hour of my life that I can just listen to it. But I do keep finding myself drawn back to Olivia Dean. And I know we've spoken about my obsession with hyper niche playlists on Spotify before. I just made a new one called The Feeling at the End of a Rom-Com, and I will put a link in the description if you want to go check that out, if you are also a fan of hyper niche playlists. And the last thing is what I'm watching. And actually, again, there's a theme because I'm not watching anything new. I've been going back and rewatching films that I wanted to rewatch, starting with Call Me By Your Name. I also want to rewatch Past Lives. And I also want to go back and rewatch one of my favorite older movies, which is Can't Buy Me Love. And I don't know if we're sensing a theme here, but they're all very lover romanticism coded. So maybe I am picking up on that trend in fashion more than I thought. Or maybe it's just because I'm getting married soon and I'm so excited and it's getting me in the mood for love. So yeah, with that, I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about that's happened in fashion in the last month or so since I've done this. Let me know what I missed out on. Let me know what I should have covered, and maybe we can pop it in the next one or do it in a bonus episode of the podcast or whatever. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely day. You enjoyed this. You subscribe if you're listening, and we speak soon. Okay, bye everyone.